Hello there. Today we're going to be trying something different with Microsoft Flight Sim 24. This game has a new career mode where you can work your way up from a freelance pilot to owning your own plane and your own company. And well, I'm a sucker for career modes like this, so I'll be giving it a go. Quickly before we get started, I want to give a quick thanks to Xbox who were kind enough to provide me with a code for the game. Also, before we get too deep into this, I want to give a quick warning. I've never played a proper flight sim. As you'll probably painfully realize, my experience is limited to a no-gravity environment in space, and that handles quite differently. So expect abject failure and recklessness throughout this video, and I apologize in advance to anyone who feels pain from how I handle these planes and how I attempt to fly. Let's just put it like that. Also, this first video is going to be focusing on going from a newbie freelance pilot to getting our company, and there's probably going to be more videos in the future because I do enjoy this game quite a lot. With that quick warning out of the way, let's just jump into the game and get started on the career journey. If you find this video enjoyable, please like and subscribe, as that helps me out a ton. Let's see how many times I crash. To get started out here, we are going to need to choose an airport to call home. And while picking one in my home country of Norway probably would be more fun, I decided to err on the side of caution as missions seem to be based on nearby airports, and in Norway there aren't a lot of them. And as such, I do make the mistake of starting out in England near the London area.
Welcome to Biggin Hill. I'm Scott, the owner of this aero club. Here at the club, we provide all the training lessons you need to get started and earn your private pilot license. Then, once you've earned your PPL, you can build up your flight hours and get more experience by taking people out on first flights. But before any of that, let's head outside and take a flight to get familiar with our aircraft and the local surroundings.
After being given a short introduction, we get started with our first flight, including the pre-checks to get started. The introduction takes us quickly through pre-flight checks, taxiing to the runway, taking off, and doing a basic pattern. But as mentioned, this is just introduction itself, and it actually skips over landing, so we'll have to try that later.
Here you can see all the different certifications you can pass throughout your career. Your first step is to work towards your private pilot license. All the training lessons you'll need to pass the PPL exam are available here. Make sure you're comfortable with these before taking the exam.
With the introduction out of the way, however, we now have access to doing the personal or private pilot license exam. Basically, our first step is going to cost us 2,000 credits. However, even if we fail this exam, we don't have to pay the fee again, being that we have basically infinite tries. And while there are a lot of training modules available to me, I decide to just give it a go. We have infinite tries after all. If it goes terrible, I know that there's something I need to do here. If it goes well, what's the worst that could happen? Yeah, right? The exam for your private pilot license here is actually pretty simple. We are tasked with taking off, making a lap around the airport, and landing. Of course, we're going to have to follow pre-flight checks. We're going to have to follow procedures with the tower, with ground, and basically do everything that you'd expect a real pilot to do in this scenario, which is going to make things a little bit interesting. But generally, it's a pretty straightforward test, so I'm just going to show you how it went.
Biggin Ground, Cessna Golf. Hotel Charlie Yankee Quebec with golf request taxi for takeoff north departure. Cessna Golf, Hotel Charlie Yankee Quebec. Cleared for takeoff runway 21 Cessna Charlie Yankee Quebec. 1 Cessna, Charlie Yankee Quebec.
I'm gonna have to admit it, I enjoyed flying this little exam. It was a pretty relaxing experience. The landing probably left a lot to be decided here, but surprisingly enough, when we get our results back, it's a straight A student with the landing actually being smooth. I felt like I made a mistake and kind of just slapped it down on the runway there, but my examiner taught different, and basically, I'm enjoying this. It's a pretty chill flying experience. Let's see what we can do now that we have our own license. And as mentioned earlier by the AI, we can now do first flight missions. These first flight missions are going to be the first missions that you'll be getting in this game if you play career mode, and they are pretty straightforward. You're basically flying a bit of a sightseeing trip for the locals. Basically, you are going to do things as usual. We prep the plane, we take off, and then we fly to our point of interest, which is usually a city in the area. And then we will slow the plane down a little bit. We'll do a bit of a circle around it and basically allow the people that are flying with us to experience their city, their home, a point of interest from above. It's pretty straightforward and simple. We basically do a lap, then we head back to the airport and land. And by doing these missions, we get experience. And also we build up basically achievements in order to do different types of missions. So you're always going to get first lines as your first ones, but you can do skydiving, you can do transport, you can do passenger transport, farm work, spraying basically, search and rescue, actual medical flights. There's a lot of things you can do that we can do in the future, but for now we're going to do a couple of first flight missions here so we can actually unlock that. So let us see, or rather, let's just get that out of the way. Now, just to give you a quick warning if you want to get this game yourself, currently there are some bugs in the game, namely ones where you'll get randomly punished for things the game do. Like in this case, I spawned in here, and then I get punished because I'm on a taxiway. I started here, I had no power to start anywhere else. And also, of course, the fact that, well, we're not inside the plane. So the game has some of these bugs. If you want to wait until they're ironed out, I can understand that, but it's just a quick warning here before you, if you're interested in trying this out yourself. Now, we're also trying a different kind of airplane here, which is very, very interesting because it's very wobbly. It's very light, let's just put it like that, and it causes some problems, particularly with the seating arrangement, as you can see. But this is our second first flight mission. We're just going to get it out of the way, and with that we should be able to move on to different tasks and pick up our commercial license, which is going to allow us to get paid for these missions. We're currently flying for free. For our commercial pilot license, the exam is actually flying from A to B, which also mirrors what our second type of mission is going to be, which is called a ferry flight, where we basically fly a plane from point A to point B. Basically, what we're transporting is the plane itself, and that is what this commercial exam is kind of mirroring. We're going to take off from our starting airport, pretty straightforward. We're going to head over to our target, following a pre-established plan. Basically tells you where you are supposed to be, both in terms of altitude and also where you should be going. There's usually some twists and turns on longer flight paths, as you can imagine. And then finally we are landing at our target airport. Pretty straightforward and simple, honestly. And again, the ferry missions are kind of the same. We are just, again, taking the job of transporting a plane from point A to point B by flying it. Not really difficult, but it is the second specialization you're going to unlock, and that is also how you unlock new mission types. Now, for this exam, I did get an A, just barely, but I did fail to respect the flight path, as I mentioned, and that is going to be a recurring theme that I should probably be very, very ashamed over. But we did pass our commercial flight exam, and we can now take on ferry flights. So the way that the system works in Microsoft Flight Sim is that every time you unlock a new type of mission, in this case ferry flights, you get a big golden mission that acts as an introductory mission that you need to complete before you start getting them as actual random missions on the map. So until we actually complete this first ferry flight mission, we're not going to get any others on the map itself. And this actually works pretty well, honestly, because basically this means that if you don't want to do a particular type of mission, let's say that you hate long-range cargo missions because, well, it's a long flight, you can basically just not do that specialization mission, and then the missions will not pop up. Now, in our case here, we kind of do want to do both ferry flights, and we want to do sightseeing missions, first flights, basically in order to try and save up some money. Because the way the game works in allowing you to make a company is that it doesn't seem to be based on level, it just seems to be based on funds. So we're going to try and save up about 25,000 credits as quickly as possible. That is basically the limit to making our first company, but we might save up a little bit more money because the first plane that you buy is heavily reduced in price, but we'll go a little bit more on that once we've actually saved up the cash and talk a little bit about how companies work. As our first paid mission here, we're going to do a ferry flight, and as I mentioned, we need to save up about 25,000, and that's going to take a while because, as you can see, we only get paid about 800 credits for doing this mission. There are buffs to your payout depending on basically how much of this trip you simmed, how much your reputation, things like that. So it's not going to be as bad as you think, but it's still going to take a while. And also, we're going to see something interesting here on this ferry flight, and that is the fact that there is grass runways, and this is something that you'll run into quite a lot. Runways that are very poorly marked, and particularly landing on them is going to be a pain. Taking off is okay, but landing on a runway where you don't actually know where the runway starts or ends or where the edges are, and the fact that you get punished if you exceed or run basically outside of the runway itself, makes our life a little bit harder, but we'll have to deal with it. So the ferry flight here, as I mentioned, is pretty straightforward. We're taking this plane from A to B. We're going to take off. We're going to fly to the airport where it's been requested that we transport the plane. We're going to land, and then we're hopefully going to get paid. Let's see how much we actually get from this first ferry flight mission of ours. So as you see, we get paid just over 1,000 credits because we get buffs from no skips, we get buffs from bad weather, and basically a reputation bonus. So instead of 800, we made 1,000. But as you can see there, the employer commission, which is basically what we pay for lending the plane, getting the mission, all things like that, is basically a lot of money. And that is also the main reason why we want to try and get ourselves a company up and running as soon as possible, so we don't have to share our earnings with our employer, so to speak. But yeah, that is the first ferry mission done. It's very simple. Fly from A to B, land, try not to destroy the plane, and if you do well, you get paid. At this point, we also get promoted from sitting in the lobby to getting our own little office, or at least an office that is being lent to us, so that is a little bit of a step up, I guess. Now, we also unlocked the third specialization here, which is flight seeing, and flight seeing is actually professional sightseeing with a plane, pretty straightforward. They're very similar to first flight missions, the only exception being that instead of just flying to one landmark, you now have to fly to 3, and the reality situation is they don't pay a lot more for that extra effort, so they do take a lot of time, they don't pay out very well, and what we're going to try and actually unlock here as soon as possible is going to be skydiving missions, which is basically, well, we take people up high, they jump out, we see who gets first to the ground. But yeah, we're going to do this lightsaber mission, and then we will see if we have any better options for earning those 25,000 grand that we do need. While we did not nail the landing for this one, we still did well enough that we leveled up to level 8, which is actually all that is needed for us to start doing skydive missions. This is probably the one and only mission that we'll do that involves sightseeing, because it is pretty lengthy and it doesn't pay well. And as such, we're just going to jump into skydive missions immediately. And the reason why I like skydive missions so much is straight up just because of the way that they work. Now, the lengthiest part of a skydive mission is climbing up to an altitude of 10,000, so that we have actually some height that our passengers can enjoy on their way down. However, because of the way the skip works in this game, if we skip straight after takeoff and jump all the way up to basically the drop zone, we don't lose a lot of money doing that. Usually when you skip, you lose most of the income from that mission, up to, in some cases, 70, 80, 90% of your income. That is not the case with skydiving. So, because again, it seems to use how far you've traveled in a straight line as an estimation on how much money it should deduct. Because we're not traveling in a straight line, but rather traveling upwards, we don't lose a lot of money from skipping, which I'll show you later on. And it's incredibly easy to complete. We just try and keep the plane as steady as possible. We have our jumpers jump out, which they'll do at certain intervals. And once they have left the plane, we can just shut it down. Well, not really shut it down. We can turn the engine to a minimum and start diving. Because the only thing that we have left to do for a skydive mission after they've left is get to the airport as quickly as possible. And that is also going to be a key reason why I enjoy skydive missions. You can generally do these missions in between 5 to 10 minutes if you're quick, and it pays just as much as any of the other missions. Sometimes they pay a lot, so we're going to be grinding a lot of these in order to get ourselves our first company. Now in my case here, I was a little bit too, well, I was trying to do a little bit too quick, and as you can see, we're coming in at a airspeed of over 150 knots. That's not great, so we're going to do basically abort the landing. We're going to come around and we're going to try again, and this time it goes a lot better. The result is also pretty good here. We get the high scores, we get an S-rated mission, if I'm not mistaken. And as such, our payout gets a little bit higher, so it does actually work out pretty well. And as you can see here from these skydive missions, they do pay generally a little bit more than some of the other missions around here, and that is going to really speed up the process of saving up those 25,000 because of the fact that we can do them so quickly compared to other mission types. However, after doing just one more paradive or parachute mission, we actually unlock a new mission type, and that is cargo transport, which is also a very, very lucrative business in this game. Basically, we fly cargo from A to B without trying to have enough turbulence to turn it into scrap. And it's basically nothing more than that. We're gonna go down to Madagascar. We are gonna fly this cargo from A to B. And hopefully, I'm not gonna destroy it. Let's see how that goes. On arriving at a destination, we figure out that there's no real markings for this runway, and as such, I land on something that isn't a runway, and we get deducted performance points. Even so, things go very, very well, and we do get a rather decent score on our first flight here. We get another S, albeit just barely, and we get a little bit of a payout, nothing insane, but we'll take that. It's basically similar to what we could pay for skydiving, but this is the introductory cargo mission. Some of the longer ones, basically the longer they are, the more you'll get paid. And as an example, I did a longer one here and it paid us out 8,000 credits, but it took me a long time to do. I probably could have done 3 full parachute missions in this time. Now, of course, depending on what your preference is, you can do whatever you want. In my case, though, I think I'm going to stick with parachute missions. Cargo missions are definitely lucrative, don't get me wrong, but it just takes a little bit too long for me to just sit there and allowing the plane to fly. You can speed up time in this game to a certain degree, but even then, it is still a pretty lengthy flight. After doing another long-range cargo mission that pays out 10k, we now actually have enough money to start our own company.
How is your pilot career going? Looks like you're growing faster than I could have imagined. I think it's time to introduce you to the freelance world. This is the overview. From here, you'll be able to quickly summarize the progress of your own companies. Once you start your first business, this will be your first port of call to keep track of everything. But to start a new company, you firstly need to buy a company license. Being your own boss can be rewarding, more income from each successful mission, and the ability to buy and customize your own fleet of aircraft. But those pros come with more responsibilities. If you own the aircraft, you're responsible for all maintenance fees. And if you crash, the aircraft is lost. So what do you want to do? Don't worry if you're not ready. You can always come back here when you've made more progress and more licenses are available.
At the beginning, the only thing we can afford here is a license and a plane for a flight seeing mission. Remember, those are the missions where you go to 3 different areas of interest. And honestly, I'm not a fan. So what we're going to do is do a couple more missions and get started with a cargo company. Now, I kind of regret this choice in editing, I can say. Because as it turns out, as I mentioned, skydiving just is a lot better, and I tried to convey that throughout this video. Skydiving is going to earn you, in most cases, money a lot quicker, and of course you'll be able to travel from kind of airport to airport, unlocking new missions as you go, because the missions you get is from the areas that you have previously visited. So the skydive missions where you can kind of just go from edge, do a quick mission, are really, really good for that. Of course, I'm not saying cargo missions are bad, they generally take you into unexplored territory anyways. But by the time you do a cargo mission, you can usually pump out 4 or 5 skydive missions. So keep that in mind here.
Congratulations, you just created your first company. However, you're going to need to buy an aircraft to begin flying for yourself. Keep in mind you can still fly as an employee at any time if needed.
At this early stage of your new company, you can only access used aircraft. Keep going, and you'll soon be able to buy brand new aircraft. Used aircraft are much cheaper than new ones, but you cannot configure them. Pick one so we can see its condition. This is where you can see the aircraft's current condition before committing to a purchase. The way you fly drastically impacts aircraft condition and the associated maintenance fees. So take care of your planes. This aircraft looks good, but in future be careful, as it's not always the case when buying secondhand.
Considering that the maintenance is going to depend on how roughly I fly the plane, I think we're going to be spending a lot of money on that. That shouldn't be a big issue. And in terms of insurance here, we're just going to go for the cheapest one. Now, if we crash, we're basically going to be stuck in contract hell for quite a while, because again, this is a heavily discounted plane. Usually you're going to have to pay between 250 to 300,000 for a used Cessna like this. This is a heavily discounted first plane. Do not sell it if you get the game. Some people have made that mistake. But yeah, let's get this plane sorted, and let us do a couple of cargo missions to make a little bit of money and probably get started on the other companies. So, as you probably realized by now, just a quick heads up, the way companies work in this game is that they are divided into purpose. Basically, I can have a cargo company that will do any type of cargo. I can have a flight seating company that just does flight seating. Basically, the companies themselves have been separated, I guess, for ease of use, and also to ensure that you don't buy wrong planes for the wrong purpose. I don't really know. But they basically separated them, probably just to make things a little bit easier for you and everyone else, also probably programming, I'd think.
aircraft arrived. Let's get the technician to check it out and make sure. You'll want to regularly check on the condition of all your aircraft. Proper maintenance is essential. Better to discover any faults down here on the ground than 5 minutes after takeoff. It's up to you to decide what needs urgent attention and what can be left till later. But keep in contact with the technician as each system will need regular maintenance.
Now, unsurprisingly, one of the reasons the used planes are cheap is because they are falling behind on maintenance. So you're still going to probably end up paying very similar cost to if you bought a completely new plane out of the fabric. And as you can imagine here, we are going to have to spend a lot of money in the future maintaining a couple of the things like the battery, like the alternator, and basically get this plane back up into working shape. With that said though, we now have our plane, we have our company, and we can get started on doing cargo missions for ourselves, not our employers. And with that, we should be earning a good 100,000, even more probably each flight. Now, the first place that I elected to do a cargo mission in was northern Italy, more accurately the Alps, and that is a problem because Alps are mountains, and the Cessna, fully laden with cargo, is not a very good climber, and as a result, this first cargo mission had us kind of weave in and out through the Alps without trying to crash, and it was not a good time for anyone involved. However, we did survive, we didn't run out of fuel, we didn't hit a mountain, and in the end here, we did make a decent chunk of income, almost 127,000, which is not bad by any means of the imagination. The only problem, of course, that I have with these missions is that they do take quite a bit of time. But this one was quite exciting because if I didn't pay attention and try to use the autopilot, we would be looking at a rebuy screen right now. So yeah, this is going to be the first video on Microsoft Flight Sim. I think we're going to be making some more videos in the future, probably going to go over each company, kind of what you can expect in terms of earning potential, things like that. I do love career modes like this, so I've been having a lot of fun with it. As you can imagine, this video is a little bit different from my usual videos, and that is because when I sat down to record this, I've hit my mute key, so I didn't have any audio from me, which is not great. So I tried to make the best that I could. I was planning to release this a couple of days ago, but as I sat down to edit, I realized I needed to do voiceovers and kind of edit down the footage a little bit. This is basically taken from 4 or 5 hours worth. So as you can imagine, needed a little bit of a tear down, a little bit of a cut down. It might even be more than that, I'm gonna be honest. But yeah, I hope you've enjoyed. I have enjoyed Microsoft Flight Sim. It does have its bugs right now, I'm not gonna lie. So do keep that in mind. Probably give it a little bit of time, maybe get it on sale if you're interested in it. But I like this career mode. I'm probably going to be, as mentioned, playing a little bit more of it. Should be back in hopefully a couple of days here with the next Around the Grid, for those of you who prefer ground speed content. But yeah, again, big thanks to Xbox for granting me a key. Appreciate it a ton. I enjoy the game. And let me know what you think of the editing. I think it's not my best piece, but I want to try and get it out today. And as mentioned, we'll probably focus on the other companies in different episodes. Maybe make videos where I can just focus on certain companies, take a look at how they operate, how they work. I'm a little bit undecided at the moment, but yeah, let me know what you think, and I shall see you next time. Thank you very much for watching. Bye bye.